Train the muscles, not the joints.
So today I'm going to do some squats. And of course, you know, I always got the haters saying I don't squat because I only do partial reps, but they're really full reps for myself. I could go down deeper, but it just puts exponential stress on my knees because I've got long femurs, shorter lower back, and so forth. And I could tell you a million stories about different examples of this I've seen in my life and why for some people it was better to do a shallower squat, and some people it was actually better for them to do a deeper squat. So it really depends on the person. So if you're an experienced person, you'll know what I'm saying is true, but if you're not, then maybe you're buying into some sort of dogma that you're told to believe at this time. But just trust me, I'm doing what is necessary for my body and what always produced the best results. Like squatting the way I squat is what built the biggest legs in natural bodybuilding, or pretty close. I was at the top of my game in my career, and it was from squatting like this. It wasn't from doing deep squats. So the results, they spoke for themselves, you know. So ultimately, I'm not saying for you to do it my way though. Again, I know I have to repeat this all the time for the people who have been here and supported me from the beginning. They're probably sick and tired of hearing me say this, but I always have somebody new come to the channel, so I have to explain this stuff over again. But the bottom line is that find out where the forces are playing out, and then from there decide what range of motion is appropriate. And you're better off starting conservatively and then going deeper and then go from there. Yeah, so let's do some warm-up sets and then move into some heavier weight. I don't know what kind of weight I'm going to move into today. My knees are a little tight today, so maybe I'll just do a 315. But we'll see. Sometimes after you warm up, you feel differently, right? So I'm going to start with the bar just to stretch things out. That feels pretty good. My ass feels nice and big. Hey, big ass, Jason. That's what you want to look for. Hey, junk in the trunk. Hey, yeah, that's right. That feels good. Nice. I'm going to go easily into one plate here. Do a few reps. Get the blood flowing. So one thing I found is if you go too wide in the squat, it makes it advantageous for you to lift heavier weight, but it takes stress off of the quads. But if you go too narrow, then that becomes another awkward obstacle, and maybe it's putting more stress on the knees. It just depends. So you have to really kind of play around with that stance. So be careful when you watch people. You might see them do something that they found works perfectly for them, but it might not be the same thing for you. You might need to do it in a different way. You might have to go a wider stance than them or narrower. So always be aware of that. Second warm-up set, 225 here. Sometimes the weight just feels light. You notice that? Sometimes things just feel light. Motion. Yeah, it feels good. All right, let's put 3 plates on. I did another set when the camera was off, warming up. And now I'm going to do a set of 3 plates. Actually, everything feels pretty good, but sometimes, you know, 1 second. But sometimes what I'm going to say is that sometimes you might go heavy, sometimes you might not go heavy, but it's not always because of injury prevention. Sometimes when you're going a little bit heavier or you're starting to move up in your warm-up sets, you'll start to notice that everything feels good. But you'll also notice that even though the joints and everything feel good, sometimes there's a certain weight that just feels like it's almost like it scratches the itch, right? And today we'll see what 315 feels like, but it feels like as I'm moving up in weight, It feels like I just don't need to go super heavy today. Once in a while, I do need to go super heavy, but today is not necessarily the day. It feels like just everything just feels right. And it's almost like you just want to enjoy it. I know that might sound weird to some of you guys, but sometimes when everything is just feeling right, it's good to stick with a weight that feels right and just stimulate the muscle growth and go from there instead of just constantly being driven by the numbers. And this is really coming down to what I want to say. It's important when you're training to be driven by that feeling or that sensation, the sensation of well-being in the body, instead of your ego, which is saying, oh, I have to lift this, I have to lift that. Like there's a whole bunch of kids at my gym right now who are really strong deadlifters, and it would be easy for me to get caught up and say, okay, screw it, I'm going to deadlift to the floor just to prove to them how strong I can be and so forth. But that's all ego, because I know that when I deadlift on the floor, my lower back doesn't really like that. It likes to do more Romanian deadlifts or rack deadlifts and stuff. So if I followed my ego, there's a good chance that something will happen to me, or I'll get injured or tweak something at some point, and that will just, put my training into the dumps, right? So what's the point of that? So what I'm saying is that when you start to follow the feeling of the body will be the best personal trainer or best coach you ever had, because it will show you what's the way to ease the body into more muscle growth and well-being and avoid injuries. And that's really the reason why you're training. I know a lot of guys on this channel, there's some 20-year-olds, there's some 30-year-olds, there's some 70-year-olds, right? We have people of different age ranges. But this truth does thread through all of the ages. I've had some people say, oh, you just train the way you do because you're 50. It's like, no, when I was at the peak of my career, I trained this way and beat everybody. That's what I'm saying. Like the way I was training then is the way I'm training now. And so the principles still ring true. It has nothing to do with age. But the only thing you'll notice with age is that the repercussions of training stupid become way more pronounced. And that's why a lot of people that are older sometimes will resonate with what I'm saying, because they have learned their lessons. So yeah, age and wisdom, right? It comes for some of us, not all of us. So if you guys are the guys that are getting wisdom or gaining wisdom as you get older, you're a rare bunch, because in the world today, there's a lack of wisdom. I'll tell you that right now. Yeah. That felt good. That felt good. So it's a good rep range, right? Around 20, 25 reps for squats. I find a lot of people avoid high reps during legs, especially squats, because it's not fun. It's really not fun at all, but it works, right? And it is safer on the joints. So if you train with higher reps sometimes, and then you train with heavier weights sometimes, you get the best of both worlds. But if you only train with heavy weights all the time, what you do is get a lot of tweaks and sprains, and you don't get as much muscular growth. That's the thing. Some people think they get more muscular growth from just lifting heavy all the time, but I find when you use both methods, you get the best of both worlds and less injuries. So that's really a bodybuilder's dream, right? You want to have as few injuries as possible and the most amount of muscular growth. And also another bonus of the high reps is that it pumps the metabolism and gets that metabolism going. So you're burning up energy, burning up fat and so forth. So you're not just a big fat lump, right? You don't want to look like a sumo wrestler as much as, some of us aspire to do that when we're bulking in the off season. But the ideal scenario is you wouldn't become a sumo wrestler from your training and then have to diet off 100 pounds of body fat by the time competition comes. But even if you're a hobbyist, it's good to challenge the different pathways with the weight training. So strength, endurance, and strength. It's not just one or the other. And that's why it's so important for you to find the right ranges of motion and the right forms to make sure that you're not beating the hell out of the joints, because the joints are already getting the crap beat out of them. You don't need to beat them up more. So Yeah, I keep repeating that, but it's something that bears repeating because I always get people arguing with me about it. But I've been doing this 35 years and I've seen a lot of people come and go, and I've seen some reasons why people don't last long in the weight training game. And I've seen a lot of mistakes that they make. And one of them is they do things that aren't appropriate for their body type. They try to do something the same as is appropriate for somebody else who's basically indestructible. And then they try to do the same thing and then they break themselves. I mean, I knew guys that were built like bricks, right? They're squatting, 1,000 pounds for reps, and they're doing partials with that, but they had no issues from doing that. They had no issues from doing, 4 to 5 plates aside on the bench for reps and doing super low rep sets, like 3, 4, 5 reps at super heavy weight, and doing this consistently in their training. But they weren't necessarily the best bodybuilders, and they kind of looked like crap, to tell you the truth. And at the same time, when I tried to train like that, and other people I knew tried to train like that, it just didn't work because they didn't have the genetics, right? So the funny thing is, people will talk about genetics when it comes to muscular shape, but there's also genetics when it comes to tendon insertions and how big your tendons are and your ligaments and how your structure is built. So some structures and some people, they do a certain movement, they might be exerting a lot more stress on a certain area or certain joints than another person based on how the forces are playing out. So that's why it's so important for you to pay attention to your individual situation and how the tensions are playing out in the body. Now, another thing most people don't realize about the squat is that it's probably the most individualized movement out of all bodybuilding, powerlifting, lifting weights, period. The reason why is because your form is dependent on a few things, not just mechanical advantage, but also being able to stay standing up. Whereas when you're laying on a bench, if you move the bar this way or that way, you're still going to stay on the bench. If you're doing shoulder presses, same thing. But with squats, you're kind of limited and forced into being accountable to that center of gravity, and that changes or at least exponentially exploits certain joint ratios. So if your femur's being long and your lower back short, you're going to have to bend over way more in order to get down to a certain level. And if your lower back is long and your femurs are short, then you can stay more straight up and down as you squat, and it'll be easier for you to get down to parallel. So if we're going to be measuring the femur and where it's positioned, the length of the femur will play a huge role in what forces are playing out and where, and how hard certain depth is on the knees and so forth. So this is something that's underestimated by a lot of people. So it's something that I want you to just be conscious of, that the squat is a much different animal than, say, bench presses or leg curls or doing some sort of machine press or even dumbbell bench and so forth. It's just not the same. And deadlifts are individualized as well to a point, because if you have really short arms and you bend over like this to deadlift off the floor, and then the next person only deadlifts like this to get the bar off the floor, obviously they're going to have a much larger mechanical advantage in lifting that weight from the bottom position. So these are all things that are playing a role in why a standard exercise form for everybody just does not apply. You have to first and foremost pay attention to your own body and find out what works and go from there. Now, on that note, or maybe it's not the same note, maybe it's a different note, I'm still writing my book about what motivated me to become a professional natural bodybuilder and what got me into competing and lifting weights in the first place. And it's filled with lots of funny stories from my childhood and lots of fight stories and all these things, and also about how I learned certain techniques or certain things about training and what worked and what didn't, and in the real world, how I figured this stuff out. And of course, it helped that I have an identical twin brother, so we could both perform different experiments with our training and see who was getting more results. But yeah, that book is in the works right now, so it will be available in well, probably several months from now. I don't know exactly when, but it's going to be available, and I'm going to be making it into an audiobook and an ebook on my website. So I'm not going on any of the big platforms like Amazon or anything. It's going to be available on my website. But as you can imagine, making your own audiobook is a heck of a lot of work, right? So it's going to be a lot of time, a lot of editing, all that kind of stuff. So I look forward to your support. And if I don't get it, I'm sending the Sasquatches in shipping to your house to find you. So no pressure or anything. Motion. So I hope this helps out in your training, guys. I hope this video was helpful to you. I'm going to continue doing the rest of my workout here. And if you need to get a hold of me, just go to naturalgallantbodybuilding.com. And thanks to the patient supporters, and take care for now. Oh yeah.